Welcome to Lost Delivery. Under its rule. In the winter of 1819, something began speaking inside a farmhouse in rural Tennessee, and it did not speak to comfort or warn. What mattered was not that the voice claimed to be a spirit, but that it knew who in that house would suffer most, and why. This is not a story about a haunting that frightened a family, it is about one that stayed long enough to decide their fate. On a cold early evening in rural Tennessee, John Bell returned to the timber farmhouse as dusk settled over the fields, finding Lucy by the fire, while Betsy stitched quietly near the hearth. As night deepened, candle flames bent without wind and Betsy froze, when something unseen brushed past her legs, as a whisper drifted through the room, too close to ignore. Later that night, as the family lay awake in their beds, the whisper returned from different corners of the farmhouse, calling names softly and stopping only when someone answered. By morning, thin red scratches appeared along Betsy's arms beneath her nightgown, and Lucy realized with quiet dread that whatever had moved through the house the night before had learned how to touch. The following evening, as lamplight dimmed, John Bell gathered the family in the main room and spoke firmly into the still air, demanding the presence leave his home. The response came not in words but in sharp welts, rising across his arms beneath his shirt, and as he staggered back in pain, the whisper returned as a calm, deliberate, like it's no longer hiding. By the next night, as darkness settled fully over the farmhouse, the whisper began answering questions before they were spoken, correcting John when he tried to pray and mocking the words, as if it had heard them all before. When Lucy attempted to lead Betsy from the room, invisible hands forced the girl back into her chair, making it clear that resistance was now being noticed. In the late-night hours that followed, the whisper began speaking at length, recounting private arguments and old grievances the Bells had never shared beyond their walls. By morning, John's voice was hoarse from sleepless prayer, and Lucy understood that the presence was no longer reacting to them, it was studying them. The next evening, just after nightfall, Richard Powell arrived at the farmhouse, to witness the disturbances for himself, listening with measured skepticism, as the whisper answered his questions from the darkness of the room. When the unseen presence repeated his own thoughts aloud, thoughts he had not spoken since arriving, his confidence faltered, and the room felt suddenly smaller. Late that night, as a cold wind moved through the fields outside, the whisper announced calmly that John Bell's time was ending, describing his death with unsettling precision. When John tried to rise from his chair, his body failed him, and the family watched in silence as invisible pressure forced him back down, as if the house itself had taken a side. By the following night, John lay confined to his bed as the whisper hovered close, reciting hymns backward and correcting the family when they begged for mercy. When a dark vial appeared on the bedside table by morning, none could say who had placed it there, only that the presence spoke with satisfaction, when John could no longer lift his head. The next day, as pale light crept through the farmhouse windows, John Bell was found motionless, his breathing shallow and his eyes unfocused, while the whisper filled the room with quiet approval. When neighbors gathered by afternoon, the presence fell silent for the first time, as though it had finished what it came to do. In the days that followed, as autumn mornings passed quietly over the Tennessee fields, Lucy took Betsy away from the farmhouse, leaving the doors unlocked, and the fire cold, for the first time. The whisper never followed them, and the house stood empty afterward, holding only the knowledge that it had been enough. Only later did witnesses realize, the whisper had never hidden its intent at all, speaking openly of judgment while the family listened in fear, instead of understanding. The horror was not that it attacked without reason, but that it believed itself righteous, and acted only after being acknowledged. If you believe, places remember what people endure inside them, stay with these stories, and pass them on, so what was once witnessed is not forgotten.